Hi all, I'm Patrick Miller. I'm going to talk about risk management and executive communication here for ICS CyberSec 2021. I hope everyone's having a great conference. So first things, these are the success factors you're going to need to actually communicate with executives. Knowing yourself, your business, the executives, of course, seems intuitive, but knowing the risks that matter to them, not you, that's key. Prioritizing for business and not security is a different mindset often. Knowing the language to speak, and then of course, how to close and get them to actually make a decision on risk. So jumping right in, security doesn't matter. It does, but it doesn't. Executives and boards, they care about risk to the organization. Security is a component of that, but security itself is often confusing. It is expensive and it keeps them from doing what they want to do. It's restrictive. So they're often, really afraid of it when you start talking about security, and especially if you get into the details. I mean, you might as well come at them with things like, chicken feet and sheep knuckle bones, because it's voodoo to them. And they've heard about things like, they've been assuaged and assured over the years that air gaps, isolation, passwords, firewalls, all of these things are protecting them and giving them that false sense of security. And of course, if it's never happened, right, if they've never been aware of an attack, whether it's happened or not, then why should they worry? And of course, the pervasive mindset of this is the way we've always done it is always there, very hard to go up against. Also, things like operations and equipment costs are very high. So those often steal the budget for everything else, is just basically paying the people and buying the machines to do the work. And then at the end of the day, it's tough for security to compete as, a single concept, right? So bundle it in with risk, and you'll find that risk can actually compete in ways that are much more effective. So the toughest slide of all for most security professionals, IT, OT, ICS, even engineering, is to look in the mirror. And this one, most get some friction with this slide. So just try to take down some of your ego and biases and just embrace some of these concepts. Management never listens to their own staff. You're going to come up against that. It's just a reality. Don't get mad about it. It's just how it is, right? It's not personal. It's not you. But they're likely going to listen to a consultant or someone on the outside before you could say the same thing, and it wouldn't matter. But that you're up against that already. You need to lose your ego when you talk to executives. They really don't care about you. I mean, it's not personal, but you're insignificant in their world. Their world is very different than yours. Your technical skills and your degrees and certificates and, presentations at prestigious conferences, all of that to them doesn't matter. And really, from their perspective, it's just table stakes. You wouldn't have the job if you weren't that good, right? When you talk to them, you need to be prepared to accept way more risk. This is just, most of us have a very low risk tolerance in the space, and we want to secure things as secure as we can get them. Executives think very differently. So you're going to need to kind of adjust your risk approach. Be prepared to repeat yourself many times using different words and not get frustrated about it. It's like when you have kids, right? You just got to say it a bunch of different ways. And then of course, soft skills matter more than anything else. So regardless of how amazingly brilliant and technical you may be, if you can't articulate that in a non-technical way to someone who has, no depth in your technology, then it's going to be very challenging for you. So soft skills are absolutely key. So let's think about this from their perspective now and kind of do the reverse. If you're an executive, you're good at business, or you wouldn't be in that position, right? You're typically really good at the business side of things. You may often come from a finance background or even a legal background or something similar versus an operations background. You do know some things. You usually know most of the business fairly well, but you're not particularly deep in any one area unless you came from that area, like finance or accounting, for example. And then, of course, most executives are good at winning. So they don't like to lose, and they don't like to give up anything that they've won. They have a job to do, and they really don't care if people like the decisions that they make. It's not a personal thing, it's a business thing. And they often think with that business mindset versus because they can't get too caught up in the feelings, or it would be difficult to make some of the decisions that they make. They definitely do not like looking stupid in front of their peers. They don't like looking weak, or uninformed. So when you do this, when you speak with them, do not put them on the spot or embarrass them. That's going to backfire, have unintended consequences, as I like to say. So if you're an executive, whatever seat you're in, whether it's a CEO or vice president or anything, around that range, everybody sees that job as a desirable spot. So you basically have a target on your back. Other people in the organization want your position, they want the salary, they want the title, they want the money. Even people on the outside may want that role. So wherever you are at that level, you are basically hit from all sides with potential competition for your spot. As such, you have a very small circle of trust, and you really don't trust anybody outside of that. Your small circle is pretty much, the only people that you will listen to, and anybody else is really an outsider. And really, you can get fired for just about any reason. If anything goes wrong, whether it was your fault or not, there's a high likelihood that, at least one executive or more are going to be on the block. So executives don't speak security, they speak risk. Of course, things like probability and impact are two areas that kind of you can distill risk down to, of course, but they're more focused on things like the risk options. Accepting risk, mitigating risk, or transferring risk are really kind of your three key options. They will most likely try to accept risk. Mitigations often cost money and cause impact, to their budget primarily or workload. And then they'll often try to transfer as much as they can, which in some cases works and doesn't work. But really, you got to remember this: no risk, no reward, right? That's what they're trying to do. The executive's job is to make as much money as possible by taking as much risk as possible and the least amount of loss along the way. That's the approach. I know that sounds strange for most security people, but that's business, right? That's how they make money, and that's what they're doing. Their job is to make money. And really, security is just one of the many, many risks that they have in their overall picture. Some of the risk types, we'll just briefly go through these. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Things like confidence is key, brand and business integrity, market confidence, shareholder confidence, customer confidence. Your competitors, are you out competing them? Are they out competing you? Credit rating. You want to do anything big, you need credit. Regulation, everyone knows the weight of regulation. Things like loss, obviously things, revenue, production, downtimes, human error, equipment failure, administrative costs, loss control, liability and insurance, your premiums, your coverage, exclusions, whether you can even get things like claims processed. These are all key risks to think about. More risks, product and process risks, things, tariff, proprietary information protection, supply chain, huge issue right now and will get even bigger in the future. Workforce disruption can be bigger in some areas or not. Of course, things like automation, are you putting people out of work? Market issues, supply, demand, cost, purchasing trends, all of these things are affected by standard market forces, but also things like pandemic, right? Stuff like that can have some very key influences and affect this overall risk. Again, just the tip of the iceberg from all of the things that executives are dealing with. A key thing is not to go at them with what we call fear, uncertainty, and doubt, or FUD. Remember, security really is a cost center. You cost the company money, you're not bringing money in. At best, you're a loss prevention element. And again, security has a stigma. To most executives, it's technical, it's confusing, it's mumbo jumbo, it's expensive. It stops me from doing all the things I want to do. Why can't I have my iPad to do these things? So, you already have kind of a negative perspective you're coming up against. And they're already spending more and more on security every day for obvious reasons to a security person, but to an executive, if I keep spending more and I keep having more risks, what am I spending my money on, right? So scaring them can have a backfire effect. It may work in the short term, right? It might get their attention up front, but ultimately it'll backfire on you. And that, okay, if it is that bad, then, why are we spending all this money? And if it is that bad, then why isn't the government helping, or why isn't the military helping? If it really is this existential, massive threat of, terrorist organizations or nation states, these things are so big and so hard to wrap your mind around any actionable approach, it often has a tendency to backfire. So some approach some approaches that have been successful. You really just change the way you say it, right? And I know that sounds silly and simple, but it's true. It works. They don't speak IT or OT. They speak business. So you have to speak in business terms. So don't say the word security. Don't even say it at all. Just rebrand the security thing as things like risk reduction, reliability or continuity improvement. Reliability improvement sounds great. We're going to be more reliable. Preventing loss. They love to hear that. Operational efficiency. I can charge more. I can charge the same and get more efficiency, right? So I'm spending less. Reduce downtime, recovery enhancement. They love that. We won't go down, or we'll bounce back if we go down, or we'll go down less. Process improvement, reduction of human error, minimizing liabilities and breakages in the process. Insurance coverage, big deal, or premium reduction, even things like claim processing, and of course anything from some of those risks we mentioned earlier that we zip through pretty quick. And then speak in terms of things like gaps and strengths. We've got a gap in this area, but we've got some other strengths that can help cover that gap or shorten up that gap or fill that gap. And then of course, maturity and growth, you always want to look for things like growth opportunities, and, be careful about things like, saying a piece of the organization or even your own is immature. Look at things like, how to grow the organization to be more competitive or more reliable. And then branding matters. This one is absolutely key. Probably the most important point is give yourself this bumper sticker kind of marketing catchy little name for your effort. And that will go a long way because it helps them wrap their mind around it in this little handle for communication with other executives or even with you. How to get them to make a decision? That's usually the hard part. Executives will always kind of kick the can down the road, and they'll defer a decision for lots of reasons. But really, when you come into this, remind them that your job is to educate them on the risks, because them as management, they own those risks, and you really provide them with a range of options that then they can choose from. Don't throw other business units under the bus. That's key, because they'll become your enemy and they'll end up fighting against you for anything, whether it's a great idea or not. So you're really here to help other areas of the business in ways that are useful to them. So it's not about shining a light on how bad someone's problem is. It's about shining a light on the path forward so that the organization can go forward in a better way. And then basically remind them that they need to make a decision, and that if they don't make a decision, then the risks you're bringing to them will be accepted by default. And that basically the risk just gets worse if the decision is delayed. So when you come with your best path, right? They're not going to take that path, but come in with your best path and be prepared to change your approach based on options. So when you give this best path, they're likely not going to take it. They're likely going to accept more risk. They might want some mitigation strategies, and they'll likely want some transfer strategies, but be prepared to adjust your approach however you need to meet their risk appetite. And that's just something you're going to have to live with. Regardless of how it goes, you don't get to get mad. You don't get to get frustrated. Don't show any of that. You need to balance, your intensity with frustration, as well as your intensity around the passion for a particular path. This is in their mind, this is just business, right? So an example of how to do this, you've got a lack of security monitoring for your ICS assets. This is a way to possibly pitch this to an executive. You want to call it visible operations. There's your bumper sticker name, visible ops. It's easier for them to wrap their head around. Some buzzwords about what it does that sound nice and catchy and positive. Your 3 key points on how this is going to make the business better. It will increase system operational data and analysis capability. This is great. More data and greater analysis. Faster issue detection and root cause analysis. Increase in uptime and lower maintenance costs. These are all great things that you can get from this. You didn't say security once, right? Cost is going to be low per network segment and a high cost recovery potential, because you get those 3 bullets we just mentioned. And in theory, you're spending not so much on a per network segment basis for this. It's going to be a little bit of technology, maybe a little bit of labor for the architecture and components and installation implementation. And then of course, there's some training that might be needed in some software, but these aren't big capital costs that we're talking about. The implementation risk is low, right? You can do this with existing stuff in most cases. You're not going to have to go out and do an enormous amount of additional lift. And then, of course, the priority is key. This can be done strategic. And this is, if you need to do something faster, starting with a strategic approach can often be beneficial. So something like, we can do this with each improvement to each network, or as we modify a network or touch a new network, we can add these components. Or touch an existing network, we can add these components. And then we can obviously move this forward over the network over time. And of course, if there's an issue or a reason, then we can move faster as needed, because we'll have the capability and the skills to do this. That way, if you need to expand faster, you can. And it also helps them kind of buy into the concept up front. So in summary, executives don't care about security. They do care about making and losing money. Your discussion should really focus on that and only that. Do your homework, be prepared, speak their language, use their terms, don't say security. Don't bring a problem without solutions. You've heard this before, it's key. Make your message easy for them to understand. Speak in their language on their terms, stoplight charts, up arrow, down arrow, keep it onto a single page, smiley face, frowny face if you have to. Just make it easy to understand. Again, your soft skills are key. And you're there to help them decide. You're there to give them as much information as you can to help them decide which path they want to take. They're likely going to take a risk path you don't like. Be cool with that and work with them to find the options that are as best you can get. And the key piece is, your job isn't really to secure the company. I know that sounds strange. Your job is to enable them to make business decisions and make money, and hopefully do so with the least amount of loss along the way. And if you can embrace that and get those soft skills in, you're going to go a lot further in your communications with executives. But thank you so much. I'm Patrick Miller. Hope to see everybody sometime soon face to face. I'm easy to find. Here's all my contact info. And have a great conference, everyone. Thanks.